Nation, good evening. Those of you who are with me, welcome into the bonus stream. Stoked to have you guys. Tom, Ryan, OCD, off camber. I don't recognize your username, but welcome into the stream as I taste these whiskeys. I have not promoted this really in any way. I didn't even post on social media about it. I was like, you know what? My goal has been to make 2 videos a week, not including Thursday live streams. And I had these samples sent to me by Elsa, and I was like, I can either spend an inordinate amount of time tasting through it and then stitching it together, because whenever I do tasting videos, there's just a lot of tasting, a lot of stuff to cut out. Otherwise, it'd just be annoying to watch it if you thought you were watching a produced video and not a live stream. If you're watching a live stream, it's kind of less annoying, right? Maybe. Well, we'll see. But anyway, stoked to have you guys here for this little thing. OCD dropping a little video recommendation out of the gates. Compare Wild Turkey 101 new label versus old. Well, which old label? I assume you're talking about the new, really sexy, like clear bottle that they have. I like that a lot. I haven't had any of those to this point. So if somebody wanted to send me samples, I'd be happy to at least do it on a live stream. I don't buy a lot of Wild Turkey 101. I dig some turkey products. If I'm going to drink turkey, generally I go for like Rare Breed or a Russell Single Barrel. But now that you mentioned something, I'm at least curious about it. Man, I started sneezing. Had like some peppered broccoli with dinner. Started sneezing. Now I got this olfactory stuff, so hopefully it doesn't really interfere with the tasting. My point tonight is to keep this relatively brief, and I think a lot of people will watch this later. So if you have come into this video, this is a live recording. Thank you for watching this. And I'm tasting six different Chattanooga samples, all provided by Elsa. So Elsa, thank you very much. Let's go through what we have here. If we have time at the end, we'll do some like Q&A. So if you have questions, just save them till the end. I'll try and leave some time at the end, but my goal is to get through all of this within 30 minutes. It's 5 minutes a sample. It should be adequate. We have the Bottled in Bond release from spring 2021, so barreled in 2017. From fall 2021, so barreled in fall 2017. Then we have the cask strength release at 111 proof. Then we have experimental single barrel number 120. It also says 6 on it, so I'm not sure what that means. I know I did some looking up. So experimental single barrel 120 is a mash bill of yellow corn, malted rye, caramel Munich malted barley, and chocolate malted corn. So just goofing around with the mash bill there. I don't know what the 6 means on this label, though, pertaining to that, but pretty sure that that's what that is. Then over here, so I'll do all these. I've already got them poured out, so we can basically get after it. Again, thanks to Aged in Ore for providing me with this dank tasting set. But this is either pronounced, and forgive me, I should have looked this up so I don't look like a butt, but this is the Nocino or Nocino. It's a walnut liqueur. That's what that is. I've never had it before, but it's walnut liqueur finished Chattanooga bourbon. And then also was kind enough to provide a full bottle of the Scotch Cask, the brand new release from Chattanooga. We're going to do this last because it's finished in peated Scotch casks, which you guys know is kind of a palate killer. Brian experienced that last week in our live stream tasting through malt whiskeys provided to us by Porkins, which was tons of fun. Porkins, I see you in the house. Stoked to have you. Tom says it's Nocino. Okay, at least I got it on the second time. That's probably what I would have guessed if I only had one guess. All right, so let's get after it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with these Bottled in Bond whiskeys first. And I actually nosed a couple before I went live. I poured them out, wanted to get them ready. And the nose on the spring edition smells like Buffalo Trace. It smells like light fruit, florals, and vanilla, and light caramel. Yeah. And honey. Really nice nose on the spring. I did do an initial palate shock with Smoke Wagon as a craftish whiskey, younger whiskey. I know these are not that old. This is Bottled in Bond, so 4 years old at least. well, we know the season, so they're 4 years old. I wanted to just get the palate acclimated a little bit. Now hitting this 100 proof, drink's kind of hot. Like I mentioned, the nose is very unassuming, very chill. I get, really soft, corny sweetness. And then it hits with some spice, but it's spice not from mash bill. At least it certainly doesn't taste that way. It's like young whiskey spice, kind of young spirit. It's not overly grainy. Like I don't get fresh baked bread, which you guys know is a note that really, really turns me off. But because, this is Chattanooga's high malt, right? Like a lot of barley, not much rye. So I'm not expecting to get much rye spice, but I think this could really benefit from it. Really crushable. If you're looking to give a gift to somebody who's, likes bourbon, is wanting to get into it, wants to experiment, but you want to give them a whiskey that's really unassuming and inoffensive, I think this Chattanooga bottled in bond would do it. So 2017, the finish is a little meh. Front's really nice. Nose is really great. Solid start. I'm not complaining about that whiskey, really. Mr. Milo here says, this is a nice comment. I'm a bartender in Nashville, and the grapevine is that the owners of Chattanooga whiskey are solid, decent peeps. I've heard a couple of podcasts with the owners, and it also, I would agree, it seems that way. It's been a long time since I listened to one of those, but I need to get down to Tennessee and do some Tennessee whiskey stuff at some point. That would be a fun trip. The nose on the fall 2017 bottled in bond is less sweet, less fruity. It's actually really hard to pick up much of anything. Yeah. It smells like bourbon, but kind of barely. Just not much going on in the nose at all. But it's got actually a touch more depth, like the sweetness, the carameliness. It's a little more caramelized. It's like when you're caramelizing sugar, you're burning it. Initially, it's just slightly toasty, but then the longer it burns, the darker, more carbonic it gets, more molassesy. So going back to the first one, the nose on one is wonderful. But very light, but good, delicious. Number 2, a little bit more rich caramel. The finish is still not amazing, but still not really useful at all, besides the fact that the finish is very peppery. Kind of leaves your mouth feeling like you just tasted new make spirit. You don't get the taste, you don't get the smells of new make, but you get the sensations of new make. If I had to pick between one of these, it's also my goal not to drink all these samples, 6 whiskeys. Goal is to get out of here consuming 3 ounces. So I poured about an ounce of each, maybe not quite. So I want to leave half of each one. All right, I'm going to try and pick my favorite between these 2 before I move on to the cask. Nose wins on the spring 2017 for sure. Palate wins on the fall 2017, and I'm gonna give the edge to palate every time. While I enjoy sniffing a whiskey, ultimately you're gonna drink it, right? When I'm actually assessing a coffee, I'll kind of blow over the way it smells. While it's important, it can smell great and taste like crap. Granted, spring 2017 doesn't taste like crap, but I'm going to give it to the fall. Does anybody know the MSRP on these? I should have looked this one up too. I'm going to actually do a quick Google search here. Chattanooga whiskey, bottled in bond, price. Do a little consultation. About $50. $50 for a 4-year-old bottled in bond Tennessee whiskey. That's a little higher than I would price it. That said, I know all their bottles are like this. The marketing is quite lovely. First distillery in Chattanooga in like a billion years because it was dry for a long time. So cool story for sure. Small guys, so that's cool as well. Whiskey's pretty decent. So I've had a lot worse at more expensive, but I think it's about $10 overpriced. That's my hot take. William Wiley, what's up? Tsukichi 28, glad to have you here. Ready to move on to the cask? So is this technically cask strength too? I mean, I'm learning with you guys, so the whole point of this was just mainly to do the tasting, but it's all 111 proof, so this isn't like really cask strength. It says cask, like just straight cask. I'm just Googling it. So Chattanooga whiskey cask 111. So I think they're alluding to cask strength. Oh, it's cask forward. So here's what they say. Handcrafted from a single fermentation in small batches. Chattanooga whiskey 111 cask is the unfiltered cask forward expression of our signature Tennessee high malt bourbon. Okay, cool. Whoop. That was not what I wanted to do. All right. William Wiley. No, not cask strength. Todd Trent, it is not. It's now confirmed. You heard it here first. Probably not first, but it's not cask strength. Kind of a candy. Like a cheap candy nose, sweet. Very subtle. I mean, without pronounced rye note, it's hard in a young whiskey to pull out much in terms of the nose because you get just light sweetness. You don't get heavy barrel character, which lends often to the aroma. And then herbaceous, rye, and even fruity notes can kind of come from rye influence as well. So these noses are very, very mellow. The barley grain, so this one is a lot more intense. It's only 11 more proof points, but the barley grain also is more pronounced. You get more malty flavors than you get in either of the first two. It doesn't taste more cask forward than the fall 2017 edition. Like I'm not picking up a level more, an increase in oak profile. It's really sweet. So the front is delicious. I got to try and pull out notes now. I'm mainly looking for barrel character and just missed everything else besides the fact that it was pretty dang sweet. Get some Tootsie Roll. That's nice. Get some like vanilla paste. It clearly sat in a barrel, but it's not to the point where I'm like, that's oaky. Like it's hard when you're tasting a young whiskey to be like, it's oaky. It's not really oaky. It's malt forward. So if you like malt whiskeys, especially American single malts, and you like bourbon, it's probably a good midway point. This one's not that much more than the Bottled and Bond either. I think Bottled and Bond's 50. I think I've seen this one for 55, 60. It's not any older, just less diluted, really. Maybe slightly more curated in terms of the barrels they put in the blend. Yeah, it's nice. And people, here's the thing, like these are so easy to drink. They're so inoffensive. They're very Tennessee whiskey, I guess. They're not dickly. Like they don't have the minerality or the orange note that is so prevalent in Dickel. It doesn't have the banana that's so prevalent in Jack Daniels. Like these, it's more of a classic bourbon, but then you add the malt layer on top. So Chattanooga whiskey is kind of its own category. I don't know anybody else who's using this much malt in their bourbons. I know MGP's doing a little bit, and the Dancing Goat guys are playing with some high malt bourbons as well. Man, coming back to the nose now on number 2, jeepers. This fall batch of the Bottled and Bond is nice. It's kind of opened up a little bit. Yeah, very Buffalo Tracy on the nose, which I dig. I dig a Buffalo Trace nose all day. All day. Yeah, that's good. I'm coming back. So I went back to the fall 2017. Now I'm coming back to the 111. It's like the same thing, but hotter, really. So I think, the quality of the bottle and bond probably varies a little bit from batch to batch, but these are both nice. Fall one's really good. And the 111, I think, is probably on par flavor profile wise. It's just turned up a little bit due to the proof, less dilution. So far I'm on Chattanooga. I don't love it personally. Like, I want more oak and a little bit more spice. Not that Buffalo Trace is spicy, and I'm okay with that, but they've got some fruitiness that the fruity, it's just not very fruity here either. You get some fruitiness in the Buffalo Trace products. And then the maltiness, and this shows up a little bit in the 111, can itself deliver some extra grain notes that make me think of young underaged whiskey. Granted, this is young, so there's still some youthful notes. It's not crazy young, but I also taste malt, which can taste somewhat similar to, new distillate underage stuff. So take that for what it's worth. All right. Any questions about any of those before I start moving on to some of the experimental stuff? My take is, if you like Chattanooga, I affirm you, and I see why you like it very much so. If you're thinking about trying Chattanooga, and in the spirit of Monday's video, you're just managing your bottle count, and I would say, yeah, you should try it for sure. I know they're getting more and more broad distribution, so I would recommend you probably try it first, given that $50 to $60 for 4-year-old whiskey is a bit of a spend. Try it first, but you're probably not going to be like, oh, this is awful. It's not. I've had, again, much worse for much more. Okay. Porkin says the 111 is only 2 to 3 years, isn't it? You know what? The first one I had of the 111 Porkins, I think it was only like 2 years old at the time. So let me see if they give an age statement, because I don't have the bottle here. If anybody else wants to jump in on the chat and let us know, is there an age profile that's well known? So the age statement on the bottle, as listed on the website, is greater than 2 years. So great point. We are talking about a pretty young whiskey there. Yeah. It's pretty good for a 2-year-old whiskey. I gotta say that. It's like what I should do, actually, before I move on. What would be fun is I have another 2-year-old bourbon that would be good to taste this next to, and try not to get carried away, and I want to get through in 30 minutes, so we'll see. But I've got that Still Austin, so 2-year-old Texas bourbon up against 2-year-old Tennessee bourbon. Let's go. Let's do it. Granted, the climate is much, much hotter down in Tejas. Nose is a lot more robust. Yeah. So I do actually get more oak immediately, right away, up front, in the nostrils, out of that Still Austin cask strength. Big Tootsie Roll note. Chocolate malt balls. It's like a milk dud. Milk dud in a whiskey glass. Still Austin has some more spiciness, which I think adds some flavors. I think it depends on what you like in a whiskey. You get a little bit more wood character, both on the nose and on the palate, some spiciness. The Still Austin honestly matches what I'm looking for in a whiskey more than the Chattanooga's 111. This is batch 1. William Wiley, I see you're vibing on the Chattanooga over the Still Austin. Which batch did you have of the Still Austin Cask Strength? This was the first one. I have not had subsequent batches. All right. Okay. Jeepers. So now we're into that experimental cask, 120. And let me read the specs on that again, which I actually already got away from. Darn it to heck. Sorry, squad. Too many windows open. Too many last-minute whiskey searches. Okay. Experimental single barrel, 120. Yellow corn, malted rye, caramel Munich malted barley, and chocolate malted corn. Aged 4 years, 10 months, 128.9 proof. Number 4 char, 53-gallon barrel. So technically, straight bourbon whiskey. Nothing kind of crazy, weird, beyond some exotic grains. Williams is not sure whichever one else it had. Well, sick, man. I was going to say, then we're tasting the same thing, but I'm not tasting her. Still Austin, so. How many? It seems like a lot of people know each other, down south who watch the show. So that's awesome. It's like there's a nation contingent, a nation squad all over the place. So like I said earlier in the year, it's one of my goals to do at least one meetup, hopefully 2 meetups. I would love to meet some people in person for sure. Off Camber, his take on the Chattanoogas. They're a value buy and well done. That's a take. It's hard for me to say value at the price given the age statement. But I would say they are well done. Like as this stuff gets older, I would say I'm going to get more jacked. Like if they drop a 6-year-old cask strength, I'm going to want to try that, I'm trying to buy less. So like on the way home from work today, I was like, I got a minute. I shouldn't stop. If I stop, I'm going to be tempted to buy, and I committed I'm not buying anything for 3 months. So that's the goal. All right, so this experimental cask is way grainier on the nose. Like so much grainier on the nose than these guys by like a billion years. The color is comparable, maybe even a little darker. But my goodness, we've got that bread dough note, which is so off-putting to me. Very different profile than these other whiskeys. Spicier, which I like that. I do get the bread dough, which I don't like that. Get some actually new make flavors and sensations on the finish. Ethanol-y. It's just a little bit more chemical. These are pretty refined. Like there's nothing majorly off-putting about these standard releases. But this experimental cask, I see why you would release it as an experimental cask, I guess. Not vibing on this one. It's the presence of useful grains for whatever reason, even at almost 5 years, is very pronounced in that one. There's a dryness on my tongue, kind of a tingly that's not great. It's off-putting. So out on the experimental cask, but I like the idea. Like I think that's one of the coolest things about craft whiskey is the amount of experimentation that they're doing and then releasing to the public, right? Because I'm sure, we know Buffalo Trace does a lot, but how often do we have access to taste Buffalo Trace experiments? And I think if you're going to release something, I got to give mad props to Chattanooga for actually saying, hey, this is an experimental cask. Like it's an experiment. So you can try it, you can buy it, but it's an experiment. So that transparency is sick. And the way that they bring you in on the process, I'm here for that. So while this is probably my least favorite whiskey so far of the night, I very much like the idea. Elsa, what is up? Thank you for jumping in. Thank you for these whiskeys. Just like a bonus live stream tonight to taste through them. Just to do a quick recap, if people have just jumped in, tasting 6 different Chattanooga samples provided by Elsa. Spring 2017, bottled in 2021. Bottled in bond was nice, light, floral on the nose, Buffalo Tracy, pretty mellow on the palate. Not bad at all, but mellow. The fall bottled in bond, a little bit deeper, get a little bit more caramely-ness out of it, and I really liked that a lot. The nose initially was harder to pick up on. It's opened up a little bit more, but I did give the nose gold medal to the spring 2017 release, but I think I like the fall better. 111 is nice and fine, a little hotter, a little more intense, but I don't think it's better necessarily than the fall 2017 bottle and bond release. And then I'm just not vibing on the experimental cask 120 at all, just because of the big grainy notes. Also like a phenolic kind of deal in here as well. Like slightly smoky, but not like a nice smoke. A little weird. A weird barrel. All right. Next up, so I'm going to move these dudes over. I also did taste, if you missed it, the 111 cask up against Still Austin 2-year cask strength. I did prefer the Still Austin to that. But to me, that's like the Still Austin is as good as a 2-year-old bourbon can get. I'd love to be proven wrong on that. All right, so now we're going to Nocino, walnut liqueur finished Chattanooga whiskey. I need to bring up the specs on this. Crap. Chattanooga whiskey, Nocino. I don't have so. Oh my gosh, 5-year, 9-month. That's pretty cool. So we got plenty of barrel time on this sucker. What's the proof? 102 proof, big barrels, 53-gallon barrels. Aging in this liqueur barrel for 1 year and 2 months. So it goes in as a 4-year product, ages for 1 year and 2 months. That's a long finishing time. I mean, commit, right? Like I'm a big fan of commitment. I think that's commendable. I think that's good human value. That's a long time to spend in a liqueur barrel. So I would expect, and I experienced this one to be very sweet. The nose is really good. This is, it's exciting. It's candy, but it's not cheap candy. It's not Tootsie Rolls. It's, oh man, it's more woody too. Like I'm having a hard time deciphering what's like oaky barrel and what is walnut liqueur influence on the nose. But the nose is fantastic. It's syrupy. It is oaky. It's got some of the fresh baked bread, some like that grainy note I was pulling out on the experimental cask, but it's almost nice. Like it smells like a monkey bread. Have you ever had monkey bread? My mom would make this monkey bread with cinnamon sugar and then like this caramel sauce and little pieces of basically donut all dropped in a pan and then baked, and then she would cover that with frosting. That's what this reminds me of. So while I get some bready notes, it's also coupled with this oak and this heavy caramel and big sweetness. It smells nice. All right. Todd Trent, it's the what did I just, Nocino finish. Walnut liqueur finish Chattanooga. That's what I'm tasting. Sorry, I don't have the bottle to set next to me, so you can just read it like this. All right, let's hit it. Let's drink it. It's unique. That is really unique. It's like a mix of kind of monkey bread notes, but there is a wininess, a red fruit, kind of fermented grape, almost sour kind of note in there, which is not sour in a bad way, just like sour, tart. Jeepers. Yeah, it's juicy. I expected more nutty flavors, given that it's a walnut liqueur. But it's more juicy than anything else. Like cran apple juice, for whatever reason. Like that tartness is there. It's prevalent. But then it's mixed with this lighter fruit, apple note. Nose is getting a little bit more perfumey. Finish is really, it's spicy, but I really can't peg it right now. Gosh, it's funky. Not bad at all. Really interesting stuff here. Like I love, hey, let's just throw some whiskey in this random barrel that held this other thing and see how it tastes. It's like so I spent a month in China a while ago now. 8.5 years ago. It's a long time. I can't believe I'm that old. Okay, 8.5 years ago, I spent a month in China, and we ate this meal. It was some special kind of rice, and they had these spices in it that were these spices in it that you would eat them, and they would had a really unique flavor. You'd bite into it, and then the next thing you know, your mouth would kind of go numb. It was the most bizarre experience, but the flavor that it would deliver, the only thing I can describe it as is Chinese numbing spice, but very few people have had that sensation. If you have, it's very remarkable and you'll never forget it. That's kind of the finish that I have here, is like after the numbness has kind of gone away and you're left with almost minty, like mentholy, but not smoky, not like cheap cigarettes. Porkins, how many things have you tried? Porkins always has the answers. Sichuan peppercorn, that may very well be it. We were in Yunnan province, though, which is not, it's close to Sichuan, but I'm sure they share spice. I'm sure there's Sichuan peppercorn in Yunnan province. Wait. Yunnan. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was because we're in Kunming. Just which province is that in? Yeah, Yunnan. Okay, I nailed it. Man, that was panic-inducing. I'm not great at world geography anyway, but I spent a month there. You'd think I'd remember. I was expecting this on the nose, based on the nose, to be more desserty. It is complex. It is something to sit and ponder. It's not my favorite thing ever either. Like a lot of these are like, wow, that's really interesting. That's not bad. I don't know that I would reach for it on the regular, but again, I totally understand why people would. And as far as craft distilleries go, you kind of latch onto the ones that you dig, that are close by, and you want to support them, and I think you should. I'm big into Dancing Goat right now, and I'm loving what they're doing. Obviously, I've spent some time there. Many of you guys have tasted some of the stuff they're doing. Granted, that's not even their own distillate yet. But then also Starlight's within driving distance. We've been doing some stuff with them too. So if you live close to Chattanooga, you're able to get your hands on some of this and kind of follow their story. Definitely a story worth following. Really, really interesting stuff. Now, the big moment, the new one. And I almost think I know what this is going to taste like. Having tasted now through, 5 of the other whiskeys, I think I can layer in the Islay finish. I wish I knew which whiskey it was, though, out of Islay. Maybe you do. Maybe Porkins knows, or William Wiley. William's a big Chattanooga guy. Or Elsa, do you know which distillery did the cask for the Islay finish come from? Let me have it if you know. We'll get the ASMR going here for the Droopy Whiskey Bottle Pop. Bring it in. Ready? Very high pitched. Cool corks. I gotta say, I love the Chattanooga corks. The continuous cork. I'm sure this might not hold up to a long time. It feels very light, not very dense. So a pronounced or very, like 10 years in the bottle, these corks I imagine might degrade a little bit, but let's just open the bottles. Don't have to worry about it. Porkins says he has Ardbeg finished Woodenville. Yeah, that would be really interesting to compare to the Chattanooga. Oh, ooh, man, that's a fun nose. William Wiley just sent me a whole read up on the Scotch finished whiskey. I can't read it though. Dang it. Because I'm trying to zoom in and it's a little bit fuzzy. Crap. Yeah, I can't read it. Anyway, I'll take a look at it later. I appreciate it, William. It's just for whatever reason not readable when I zoom in. I might have to like download the image first. I think Instagram sucks in terms of like image resolution too. If you send somebody, try saving it to my camera roll, then opening it. No dice. Yeah. Sorry, man. Can't read it. Anyway, the first peat-influenced American whiskey I had was ASW Tire Fire, which William sent me. Thanks, William. And I was not a fan of that as much. This is smoky. I do get some gasoline. I get some gasoline on the nose. And I think it's just the presence of peat smoke and alcohol together with like oaky, you know, I don't know what it is, because I wouldn't normally say like I smell gasoline in a peated Scotch generally. But yeah, to my where I was going, was not vibing on Tire Fire at all. Did not like it. One of the craft whiskeys in my 100 craft whiskey journey last year that I disliked the most. So yeah, coming into this bad boy now. Off camera, high octane gasoline. It does smell a lot like gasoline. It's hard for me. I'm trying to like sniff past that, and eventually we're gonna stop sniffing and get to the palate on this. But while I think about this one for a minute, Matt Schwanda asked a great question. What are my thoughts generally on finished whiskeys? Well, Matt, initially, by initially I mean like, I don't know, a year ago, I would have said I preferred non-finished whiskeys. And more often than not, I reach for non-finished whiskeys. That said, I mean, if you're an explorer, right? Like how many, like going back to my hair's, so I cut the sides of my hair and I left everything on top long. The problem is with a hat now, it kind of just does what it does and it's falling out everywhere. Anyway, with finishing whiskeys, it for the explorer in you provides a billion options, flavor options for you to explore. The combinations of mash bill, initial aging, initial terroir, and then the addition of certain finishes opens up all kinds of flavor profile options. Now, if you have 12-year-old wild turkey, do you want to finish that? Well, maybe not. Probably not, because the whiskey is probably phenomenal as is, and I love the profile of straight bourbon whiskey. Just love it so much. That said, a lot of craft whiskeys, 3, 4, 5-year-old whiskeys are fine. They're just kind of plain. And, 4-year-old whiskey from Wilderness Trail against 4-year-old whiskey from Starlight against 4-year-old whiskey from Woodenville, it's all going to be like 4-year-old whiskey. And it's hard to make 4-year-old whiskey great. The closest thing, I've had a few single barrels that were hitters. I've got, how old is this pick? I got this Driftless Glen pick here that Amans did. And it's not old. It's 4 or 5 years old. It doesn't have an age statement on it. Dang it. But gosh, it's phenomenal. The barrel we might have coming someday from Middle West Spirits was so good. And we wouldn't pick a crappy 4 or 5-year-old whiskey. So anyway, Those are very rare, though. But you can take 4, 5, 6-year-old whiskey and make it really, really interesting, and in some cases, really, really good by finishing it. So I've had some really, really great whiskeys that probably wouldn't have been really, really great without the secondary finishing. And I'm bottom line is to say I'm here for it. You know, it'll always be probably a minority in the things that I reach for generally. But I mean, even thinking back on our picks so far, like I love the double oak rye that's technically finished, right? It's just finished in new oak. And then there's actually a possibility that I might bring a half barrel of port finished rye from Dancing Goat. I think I might have said our first pick at Dancing. Our first pick at Starlight was double oak rye. That was great. But we might bring a half barrel of port finished 95.5 rye from Dancing Goat because that was really, really good. And I tasted that this weekend and can have a half barrel if I want it. So there's a time and a place for sure. All right, let's get into this thing. And then we'll have a few minutes for questions, but I got to kind of wrap up the tasting. I have to be done by 9. That's where we're at. The gasoline's wearing off a little bit. There is a spicy note that I'm having a hard time discerning through the peat influence. But there was a sweetness that I got when I popped the bottle too that made me go, ooh. I didn't get gasoline straight out of the bottle. I got gasoline when I poured it. Oh my gosh, it's so gasoline-y, guys. The nose is tough. It's really hard to smell through it. Okay, let's taste it. Really sweet. Definitely better than Tire Fire. Not drying and astringent in the same way Tire Fire was. This had to be, I mean, Bruichladdich or Lefroy. Like, this is just really peaty by simply being aged in an Islay cask. Like, it's unbelievably peaty for that. Wow. Second sip, it's a little more subtle. Like, that first sip was a palate shocker because it was so smoky. It's got some salinity to it. But this is a really sweet whiskey as well. So it's 4 years old. Finish time was 3 months, a little over 3 months. It said finish was 3 different types of Islay Scotch barrels. Hella smoky. They did 5 to 7 barrels of this. The batch size 5 to 7 barrels. They're a small company. Like, how many barrels was it? Was it 5 or was it 7? It was 5 to 7-ish. The nose is bad. I'm gonna say that. I do not like the nose on here. It's so harsh. The palate is not nearly as offensive as the nose. If you told me this was Scotch, I would be like, that's really interesting. Is that a bourbon finished Islay? Because I would say, yeah, that's probably, it tastes more like a bourbon finished Islay Scotch, and as a high malt American whiskey, that makes sense. I can see that. It tastes more like that than it is a Scotch finished bourbon because it's so smoky. And I'm gonna have to let it mellow out too because I'm hoping that nose dissipates a little bit. My goodness gracious. I mean, my palate's been performing recently, so I feel like really sensitive to flavors. But there's a striking, piercing gasoline note. It's like smoky, but then it's I mean, how would you guys describe gasoline? Like, it's got this kind of sulfuric piercing quality that goes beyond smoke, right? Like, it's like smoke plus chemicals. And that's what I'm getting here. Band-Aid, not so much. I mean, Band-Aids to me is this more rubbery, less smoky, latex. Anyway, we're gonna wrap that one up. I don't want to. I might have one more pour upstairs, but I don't want to blast my palate. So yeah, we'll see how this one kind of evolves. If the nose dials down, could be really nice barbecue pour. The sweetness was really good. The smoky addition was intriguing, and I should do it up against some peated scotches. I've got a few of them now, and let it play ball against those. Like coming off these really light, chill, malt forward, sweet, corny bourbons and going into that sucker, I was just underprepared. Like even though it says Islay Scotch finish, I was underprepared for it. I wasn't ready for that level of intensity. Sulfur and smoke, kind of, yeah. So we'll see how that one dials in. If you guys love that one, does anybody love that one? I mean, folks have said nose get. William Wiley says nose gets better. One of the mash bills in it is peated. Okay, got it. So if they're using a peated mash bill and then finishing it in a Scotch cask, that's also illuminating. So that's helpful as well. William Wiley says he does love it. Sweet. William, what do you love about it? Maybe help us bring that to life a little bit. Like, what are the flavor notes you drop? Because, this is my opinion. Just pop the bottle. For those who do love it, I want to make sure we kind of paint that picture as well. I have a little bit more while you drop your notes. I need to stop sniffing it. I don't know. It's just a habit. Get the glass, go straight to the nose. It's like my daughter, my 11-month-old. Everything she picks up goes straight to the mouth. Every whiskey I have goes straight to the nose. Coffee, it doesn't matter. I could be drinking milk, cold milk, and I'd sniff it. Tom Lynch says he can't say he loves it, but it's interesting. Yeah, Tom, I've seen you chatting about it in the chat, and it seems like that's kind of where you come down. Wiley gets a lot of barbecue notes, barbecue smoke, earthy notes like mushroom, which I wouldn't look for out of a bourbon generally. But if we're talking more of this peated whiskey category, yeah, I mean like earthy, salinity, seafood. It all depends on what you're looking for. Your interpretation of a whiskey 100% depends on what you're trying to get out of it. And if you're looking to get a desserty experience out of anything peated, you're going to fail, probably. The closest thing I've gotten was the Lagavulin Distillers Edition, which was heavily sherried. Really enjoyable. I liked that. It was a good juxtaposition of like syrupy sweetness and smoke. William says he compared this to Lafroig 16. He liked the Chattanooga Scotch Cask better. Interesting. I have not had Lafroig 16. This is really sweet. Like the palate is infinitely better than the nose. And so that's why I'm hoping that nose dials down, because it's sweet and it's smoky, big sweetness, and does not have like a turpentine. Boom. That's what I was looking for. So it's like smoke plus turpentine equals gasoline. Doesn't have that on the palate. Doesn't taste like turpentine. It's actually pleasant. So Tom says he had peated scotch once and was very unhappy about it. Yeah. And the palate is it's sweet. It's nice and it's viscous. I should just plug my nose and drink this one, because the more I'm tasting it now that I've got that peated experience. You know what? Before we sign off, we got one more minute. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I've got like a Hellraiser peated scotch, like an 8-year-old peated. Porkin says he can't stand it. Lafroig is it's an animal. Like, oh my goodness gracious. So this was the Nocino. Okay. Just cleaning glasses. I don't want to dirty more glasses. There's already an inordinate amount of dishes to do here. It took me 45 minutes to find that turpentine note. So I need Brian. Okay, so this is from a sample set from Scotch Malt Whiskey Society. This is an 8-year-old. It's 130 proof. So like I said, it's a Hellraiser. But this, I'm going to taste this, and then I'm going to go back into the Chattanooga Scotch finish, see how that compares. Because I think palate conditioning will have a big impact here. Racing fuel, yes. Justin Bieber says it's sweet gasoline. Biebs, kind of. Some peated scotches can kind of taste that way. It smelled like gasoline. Didn't really taste. Not that I've tasted gasoline before, so maybe it could. Maybe it could. Okay. Young peated scotch. This is actually really fruity. Oh my goodness. Finish is really earthy. Kind of got like a umami seaweed. Almost like Bloody Mary kind of vibe. A little drying. Very green. Now that I've sucked all the moisture out of my mouth with that, come back into the Chattanooga. Immediately, the nose is a little bit sweeter. It's crazy how much you can influence your palate, y'all. Like, depends on what you're eating, tasting, drinking. So I would imagine if you're having smoked oysters and you wanted to pour out some Chattanooga Scotch Cask with that, it's probably going to go pretty well. Probably a decent pairing. Still a little turpentine on the nose. And the smokiness is still really pronounced even up against this cask strength Islay. So take that for what it's worth. I don't know how they got all the phenol / smoke into this whiskey. I mean, apparently some of it's peated, but now I got to do some reading, y'all. So that's what I challenge you to do. That's where I'll leave you tonight. Thank you for jumping in for this live stream. Hopefully you enjoyed this little journey through some Chattanooga whiskey. It's my opinion. Doesn't mean it's the opinion. But now I'm going to go read a little bit more about the Scotch release and explore it a little bit more in the days ahead. But I'll catch you all tomorrow night. Brian's back. I have not picked out the topic, so if y'all have an interesting thing you want us to get into, we're out of blinds right now, so we're going topic heavy tomorrow. Maybe we'll do you name it, we review it. We'll bring out our collections and maybe do some bottle pops. We'll see. But catch you tomorrow night back here on the channel, 8 o'clock. That's when we'll go live. And, of course, we'll play the new, nice, delightful opening montage for you all over again. Till then, keep it neat. Bye.